There are many astronaut stories that are seemingly so impossible to believe, and yet, why not believe them? These people have left this planet and been to outer space, but on that note, some of these stories were seemingly just jokes, and I'll tell you which ones. I'm Liz Malati, your host, and here are your top 10 dark astronaut urban legends that will terrify you, or make you excited about aliens existing, one of the two. In our number 10 spot, we have exploding objects. On May 5th, 1981, cosmonauts Vladimir Kovalanek and Viktor Savink were flying over South Africa when an object flew at their ship. The object flew and then exploded. Apparently, Vladimir was doing some gymnastic exercises when he looked through a porthole and saw an object he could not explain. This is a direct quote from Vladimir. "It is impossible to determine distances in space. A small object can appear large and far away and the other way around. Anyway, I saw this object and I called over Victor, and then something happened I could not explain, something impossible according to the laws of physics. The object had this shape, elliptical, and flew with us. From a frontal view, it looked like it would rotate in flight direction. It only flew straight, but then a kind of explosion happened, very beautiful to watch, of golden light. This was the first part. Then, 1 or 2 seconds later, a second explosion followed somewhere else, and 2 spheres appeared, golden and very beautiful. After this explosion, I just saw white smoke, then a cloud-like sphere. Before we entered the darkness, we flew through the Terminator, the twilight zone between day and night. We flew eastwards, and when we entered the darkness of the Earth's shadow, I could not see them any longer. The 2 spheres never returned. Vlad and Victor have commented that it was probably a UFO, because it was definitely not mysticism. 2 people watched it at the same time. In our number 9 spot, we have the unidentified object. In 1995, astronaut Catherine Katie Coleman was on board the US Space Shuttle Columbia during its STS-73 mission when she said, "We have an unidentified flying object." Look, that is a very serious joke. As an alien believer myself, okay, I'm like a borderline a believer. But anyways, if I was listening to this and heard her say that, I would freak out and believe it to be true. And so did so many people around the world when they heard her say that. Apparently, she eventually told the world that it was a joke, and I can believe it to be a joke, but I could also believe that perhaps she was told to say that it's a joke because the government doesn't want people to know that aliens are real. Anyways, regardless, we'll never know the real truth anyway. But what do you think? Was she actually joking, or was she told to lie? Leave a comment and tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. In our number 8 spot, we have the Great Wall of China. I had to include this one because it's dark up there in space, so the astronaut was technically dark too, so therefore, this is a dark astronaut urban legend. Just love me. Anyways, while in space, astronaut Yang Liwei wanted to discover whether you could see the Great Wall of China, because as the legend goes, you apparently can see it from space. In fact, the belief is that it is the only man-made structure that is visible. But unfortunately, that is just not true. I know, how sad, right? It actually terrifies me that after this was proven untrue, that the Guinness Book of Records people weren't on this. They should be planning some kind of structure that can be seen from space, because otherwise, what is their purpose? Tell me. That would be the ultimate record to break and record. In our number 7 spot, we have the flying saucers. This is a story told by cosmonaut Georgi Greco, who witnessed flying saucers while on the Salyut 6 station. Georgi has said, "It all started when I saw the flying saucers and I got scared. I looked out of the Salyut 6 orbital station viewpoint and saw that we were being followed by saucers. They were moving in a clearly defined formation and occasionally flickered with red lights. So I said to my crew commander, Yuri, 'Look, here they come.' He smiled and said that it was just dust that had come off the station coating when we corrected our orbit. But Georgie performed an experiment to show that it was not dust, and later on he went on to see them again, and this time there were more witnesses with him. This is wild, but honestly, I totally believe it. It's silly to think that we're the only intelligent life to exist in the universe. I don't know, maybe it's just me." In our number 6 spot, we have glowing particles. Astronaut John Glenn was in his first orbital flight on the Mercury 6 when he came across something strange. The spacecraft was in orbit, and when the sun came out, he said that he was surrounded by thousands of small glowing particles that were moving alongside the ship, spinning around. He has said that he had never seen anything like it before. Alien spaceships, he thought. Well, he later discovered that the particles were small pieces of ice. The product of hydrogen peroxide decomposition in the Attitude engines. Apparently, it was a while before he learned this, so it must have been really hard to have this truth sink in. Darn, well, this story did seem promising, but sadly, no alien discovery here. Although, if it were aliens, would he not be terrified, as I guess he would have been surrounded by a fleet of them? In our number 5 story, we have pink fireflies. In the mid-70s, apparently the American Skylab space station had a UFO sighting. During his 3rd expedition to the station, Bill Pogue went on a spacewalk, which is, yes, a walk outside the space station in space. Pretty terrifying. On one of his walks on November 22nd, 1973, he noticed something weird. There was apparently a dim light not too far from the planet. Suddenly, his partner, Ed Gibson, said, "Look at those things. Are those UFOs? There are hundreds of them." Bill looked in the direction that his partner was pointing in, and he saw a ton, maybe even hundreds, of flying objects that looked like fireflies, pink and purple, with a bit of a metallic tint. After a while of pure astonishment, skepticism kicked in, and Bill had an epiphany that made him laugh out loud. He said, "These UFOs are pieces of plastic insulation that I had cut off when I removed the junction box. The aluminum was the metallic appearance that reflected the light." Darn. Well, it sounds like that was probably for the best because they weren't even inside their spaceship. They could have been blasted into space if it were. In our number 4 spot, we have the moon landing was fake. Okay, this is an urban legend known everywhere around the world, and honestly, there's no way to actually prove that it is true or not. All we can do is trust in our government that they're telling us the truth and not lying to us. They never lie, so why would they lie about this? Well, all jokes aside, some people believe that the moon landing was faked in a studio, and the reason, concluded, wouldn't be above a human ego motivating factor. To be able to say that we were the first people to get to the moon in the minds of the world, that would be motivating. At this point, I think a lot of people believe that we have gone to the moon many times, but still there are a lot of people who truly wonder if Neil Armstrong really was the first. Well, unless some footage gets released showing him in a studio, then I'm sure we'll never really know for sure. In our number 3 spot, we have Good Luck, Mr. Gorski. Astronaut Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon, famously uttered these words while walking on the moon. "Good luck, Mr. Gorski." These words had the world in a frenzy trying to figure out who Mr. Gorski was, and no one was ever able to locate him or figure out who he was. Some thought maybe it was someone on the set of the moon production. Obviously, these people believed that the landing was faked. Some thought it was an alien friend. Apparently, Neil once said that Mr. Gorski was his neighbor as a child, and his neighbor's wife was shouting at her husband about something intimate, and that he will only get what he wants when the kid next door lands on the moon. Well, that would be pretty crazy if the story were true, but apparently there is no proof, as NASA has released their transcripts and they don't even show Neil saying that at all, and some think he was just joking. In our number 2 spot, we have communion. This is an urban legend that after further investigation I have concluded seems to be true. It's not necessarily dark, and I'm not sure it would terrify you unless you're afraid of religion, which fair enough. I'm sure there's someone watching that is, but I wanted to include it because it's kind of a cute story. Apparently in 1969, when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon, Buzz had his own little communion and ate bread and wine provided by his church back home and recited a few words for the ceremony. He has a communion. Get it? Get it? He didn't recite too much though, because apparently there were some legal issues against NASA when the Apollo 8 crew recited from Genesis years prior, but he thought the symbology of the first food and drink eaten on the moon was interesting though, as it was the food and drink of the son of the person who created the moon and earth. Interesting, but honestly, the most interesting thing to me here is the fact that I think I just realized who Buzz Lightyear was named after. Mind blown. In our number 1 spot, we have Knocking on Yang's Door. Knock, knock, knocking on Yang's door. Everything's a song in my head. In 2003, Yang Liwei became the first Chinese astronaut in space. In 2016, Yang said he heard someone knocking on the outside of his spaceship. He tried to look outside of the ship through a peephole, but of course no one was there. He tried to describe and even demonstrate the sound for people when he got back home, but of course no conclusion could have been made. Some hypothesize that it could be the expanding and contracting of the ship due to the ever-changing temperature of the ship as it orbits the Earth. People of course also think that it's probably time travelers from other spaceships in time, or, aliens. I say most likely both.